Hello, I'm Ben. Welcome to the channel. So today we're going to talk about how to buy a car. So if you're a young person that's never bought a car before, or if this is your first time because you've had a decent ride for a while, or if you're just newly getting into cars or vehicles and modes of transportation outside of public transportation, this is the video for you. So everybody has their opinions around how you should buy a car. What I'm going to do is tell you what works and show you how to get the best deal. Typically people have different opinions of that, but let me tell you the way that's worked for me in these last 3 decades and worked for those of my friends and family that have also helped with this process. So number one, who you buy the car from matters, right? But it doesn't matter as much as the car itself. So before you go into this, you need to know your budget. I would say seek your own approval online and have that approval before you ever go somewhere to look to buy a car. Okay, so in that loan offer that you get online when you approve for financing, and you just do it online with any bank, do it with your bank or some bank you're familiar with that has a good reputation, and then you get that loan amount and you get that interest rate that you're dealing with, etc. Now, when you go to a car dealership, they'll have lenders too, but if you go in with that in your hand, now you don't need their money. Now you can do it your way. Okay, we're going to talk about what that is. So what I've told people historically, a company like CarMax buys and sells a lot of cars, right? They buy their cars at auction. So when you're looking for a car, go to the CarMax website and see the prices that they have on cars. CarMax, when they buy a car, they only add 2 or 3 grand to the price when they sell it because they're a volume dealer. They're not trying to make 20K off of a car. If you go to a small car dealership, they may very well be trying to make 20K off of a car because this may be the only car they're selling this month, and it may need to pay their bills for the next 2 months. Whereas CarMax will sell dozens at each location in a week, if not more. So that's why you want to use CarMax numbers on purchase price. Okay, so CarMax, if you look at their website, go to the website, they have locations all over the country. And I used to recommend CarMax, but the one closest to me is just a straight up dumpster fire. Okay, I was an employee of CarMax decades ago where I was a buyer from them. I went and bought cars. I went to markets and auctions and bought cars from those places. The thing that CarMax does that I like, they don't buy cars that have previous vehicle issues or wrecks, accidents, or odometers that have been turned back. So what an odometer is, it tells you what your mileage is. What some places do is they roll those back so the car looks like it has less mileage on it, which suggests less wear and tear. So that's why CarMax is good. They used to do a 121-point inspection on vehicles before they bought it. They don't do that anymore. I've bought 2 cars from CarMax in the last decade, or the last 10 years, and they didn't do that on any of them. Because when I looked at the car myself personally and in helping other people, I could tell that they didn't check this and they didn't do what they should have. And then at the local one that's so bad out where we are, I've had a family member, my brother actually had them ship a car from another location to this one, and the stuff that was supposed to be fixed, when they went to pick up the car, they sent him a message, hey, your car's ready. When they went to go pick up the car, none of the stuff was ready. That wasn't clean, it wasn't washed. So that is this local one. But historically, CarMax, they buy the most vehicles, so they have the best idea on what a car should sell for. So if you go there first, then you'll know what you should pay for a car. So use CarMax for that. Number 2 is get a Carfax report. This Carfax report is based on the VIN number on the vehicle. Anybody that was going to sell me a car would have to give me a Carfax report for that car. On that, it tells you the entire history of the vehicle, how many people have owned it, etc. If the place won't give you a Carfax for the car and they won't print it out in front of you, then go buy somewhere else, because that is a requirement. You need to have that as a requirement. So if you go in 1 with your own financing, you go in 2, you know that the car is going to have a Carfax report, and you know what the price should be because you looked at CarMax online because they buy the most cars. When you're buying a car, you want to get the price from who buys the most cars, not who sells the most cars, right? So you want to get what things are being bought for. So that's why you get that. Most old school dealerships, they give you this. This is what they go by, this little 4-box thing, which is annoying. And that's what you're up against. So remember, if you're fighting this and you don't know what cars sell for, then you're not going to know the answers to this question. So some sales guy who's slick that gets paid on how much he prices the car for and gets paid on how much he's charging you, there's a couple ways they get paid. So let me show you that. The first is price. If they paid 20 grand for the car and they're selling it for 28, it suggests that they're making $8,000 off of the car that they bought for 20, right? And in that $8,000 is whatever their service they did on it, if they replaced a tire or if they filled in paint chips, etc. That's what comes out of price. So make sure you know what the prices should be based on that research you've done beforehand, okay? So that's where you determine price. You don't determine price because, ooh, I really love this car. That's not how you buy a car. You buy a car that meets your needs, that you want, that's going to have cold AC in the summer and warm heat in the winter. That's what you do. That's safe and does well in the safety inspection. The other piece too is you don't want to buy a car that's been wrecked. That's why buying from a CarMax or getting a Carfax is so important. Because think about a Coca-Cola can. If you crush that can and then you pull it back out, it's similar to the same shape, but it'll never be as strong as it was the first time. Cars are exactly the same way. So if you buy a car that's frame has been damaged and has frame damage, structurally that car it may be a fine car to drive back and forth, get you from point A to point B, but if you get hit, that frame is gone already. So from a safety standpoint, you're much more likely to be injured or killed in an accident when a car has already been in a severe accident before. It may look just like it did before, but it'll never have the same strength. That's why the Carfax is so important. So that's point 1 and 2. The next about the price, we just discussed that. Price is the simplest piece of it. There are different levels of a car based on how one has leather, one has this, one has navigation. There are different grades of a car when you buy a certain model. That's fine. As you go through that, have one that you have your intent set on and go after that. So for example, I bought a King Ranch F-150 the last time I bought a vehicle. I bought it for $20-something thousand. The person that bought it the first time paid almost 70 grand for that truck. So that's number 3, only buy used vehicles. When you buy a new vehicle, you're taking almost 40% hit in value when you drive it off the lot. And that's a fact. It used to be 50%. It's now more about 43, 47%. When you drive a brand new car off the lot, if you turned around the next day and tried to sell it, it would be worth 40% less than what you paid yesterday. So think about that. When you buy a used car and it's got mileage on it, several things have probably happened. Most of the recalls have already been done, so you don't have to be bothered by it. Any safety recalls and stuff that have been done, you don't have to be bothered by it. And then the mileage, the car runs fine because it's got good mileage. And if you have a Carfax, you can tell how many people have owned it and how they took care of it and where did it live. Did it live up north where it's got a bunch of salt underneath it, where it's going to rot the frame, it's going to rust? Or has it been in the south, or has it been in the Midwest where you're not going to have those kind of issues? That's things you want to consider. So CarMax for the price, Carfax for the history. Make sure it's a vehicle that's going to be sturdy, safe, and sound for you. And then the next piece is going to talk about payment. So if you got your own financing before you went in, now they can run their financing too. And if they have a better option, obviously take it. You want a fixed APR where it's fixed at a certain interest rate. You want a competitive interest rate. The last vehicle I bought was at 2.5%. 2.5% fixed, right? So I couldn't even put money. It was a better investment with my money than my bank would be. My bank wouldn't even pay me that. And if that's all I'm paying to borrow that money, that made a lot of sense to me. Now, I pay most things off in 3 years. I don't typically take the 5 years, but I financed it for 5 years. So that's the next suggestion is finance the vehicle for 60 months, right? That's for 5 years, and pay it off over that time. Make sure you select no prepayment penalty because you want to pay it off as fast as you can. But let's say you don't get a lot of hours, or at some point during that there's a job shortage, or you don't have work, etc., then you have to make the smallest payment possible in that car because you financed it over the full period. So you get it for the 5 year, but you pay it off as quick as you can because no prepayment penalty. So that goes to that next square. This is the price of the vehicle. We've already talked about that. The monthly payment is going to be dependent upon your term, how long you get it for, and your interest rate. And that's going to determine how much you pay per month. So the price of the car divided by those two items come up with your monthly payment. So that's how you combat those. The next is your interest rate. If you have your own financing when you come in and they offer you an interest rate that's 6% more than that, that's when you pull your own financing out and say, you know what, I've got my own that's better than that. Let's make sure your car qualifies. And then that gives you the power. It keeps the power in your pocket. And the next piece there is the down payment. Okay, so let's talk about down payment. If you're buying a $20,000 car and the note, when they write it all down, is $20,000 and you're going to make a $4,000 down payment, that means you should be financing $16,000. Make sure that those numbers and that math adds up, because sometimes they try to sell you these additional packages and everything else, and that dwindles your down payment. They try to get your down payment to where it equals zero. So basically, you just paid somebody $4,000 worth of cash to buy a car from them. That's ridiculous. Make sure you don't do that. That's where they get you. And here's the most important piece of buying a car. Do not go in expecting to trade your car as the down payment, okay? Most dealerships can get you 100% financing, which means you don't have to do any down payment at all. And depending on your credit, you'll have more options. But do not go in there and try to trade your car for that car. This is why. It is a dealership practice to hold your keys and keep you hostage so you can't leave. And they'll say, well, they're still looking at your car, et cetera, et cetera. The biggest part about buying a car or buying anything is the ability to walk away. So yes, you may, after you purchase your car, say, hey, I'd like to sell my car to you or trade my car to you. What value would you give me on that? But that is a secondary transaction. You don't do that the same time, the same day, because that is a tactic that they use at big dealerships across the country. When I was a young man, the first vehicle I bought, they did that to me at that dealership. I was to the point that I was about ready to throw the guy through the wall because he would not bring me my keys. And I finally stood up. I was a young man. I moved some furniture around and said, bring me my keys now. And then they brought me my keys and I left. But they did that with the intent of leaving me in there until I finally just said, all right, fine, let me buy your car, yada, yada, yada. So go in there with the power and keep your own keys in your pocket. And if they ask about that, you say it other times. Now, the thumbnail I'm going to use on this, it's got a few things about it. So crunch the numbers. That's what we're talking about. Start at CarMax online to find what vehicles are selling for. And so that's where you start. That's how you crunch the numbers. And then you apply for your own financing if you can do that. 2 is the research. That's what we talked about, CarMax. And when you get a vehicle, make sure they provide you a Carfax for the vehicle and make sure that Carfax is dated today or yesterday. It should be recent. Last 5 days is fine because they wouldn't have rebuilt the car in that period of time, right? 3 is get a target list, create a target list. That is true for cars in your mind that you want to have prices down to what they would sell for at CarMax, etc. Next is make it official. That's when you ensure the title and registration and official transfer. That goes, the title and registration, you'll pay that fee for that in the closing of your deal. So that's fine. That will be a fee in addition to the price of the car that you agreed to. So it's the price of your car minus your down payment plus tax, titles, and tags. That should be the fees that you pay. Anything else is additional stuff that you may add, and you may add that. You may want a warranty for this many days or months or whatever. I bought the engine and transmission warranty on my used cars that I buy because if the transmission or the engine goes out, it's going to cost me between $2,000 and $7,000 or $2,000 and $15,000 depending on the motor. So I did buy that, and I think it cost me $2,000. But I did buy that because if that does have an issue in the first 5 years that I own the vehicle, then they'll pay for it completely. So there are some things that may be a benefit, but don't overdo it and don't overthink it. Number 3 is contact the seller. I would say buy from a dealership as often as you can. Okay. You want to buy from a dealership if you do these things because it makes it safer, and you want to sell to individuals. Individuals will pay you more for your car. Local individuals, you'll make more money. So that's how you want to sell your car most time, is paid for local individuals. If you have financing on your car that you're trying to get rid of, then you may want to see what the dealership would buy that from you for after you get your deal worked out on your car. Because what you don't want them to do is give you too little for the car that you're selling to them and put that on the other, because that's just a percentage that's going to go to them. And I think that's pretty much everything we've hit here. The test drive you want to do, the negotiation, you want to own that in the ways I just told you how. They should have the vehicle inspected, so you shouldn't have to do that. You should have a fresh inspection sticker. The tax, title, and tag should be included in that purchase, and that should be it. When you buy a car from an individual, you take the risk of that individual. What you can do to improve your situation if you're buying a car from an individual, know what the prices are at CarMax. A lot of people are going to say Kelley Blue Book. Don't look at that. That can be 16 to 24% off. They're looking at not at sale or purchase data, but at sales data. So the number's inflated. You want to look at what CarMax does because they buy cars, more cars than anyone else, and the interest rate, or rather the price that they sell those cars for, is just $3,000 or less. So that's what they add to the car. So if they buy a car for 10 grand, they might sell it for 13, but it most likely is going to go for 12.5. Okay. They're not in it for the big amounts because they're in it for the volume. So when you're buying from an individual, you use the price that CarMax has for what you offer on the car. And then if you have that individual provide you a Carfax, now you've got some assurity the car's not going to have issues. But there are cars that have that are lemons. The lemon law was made for that. So there are cars that the computer may have issues, et cetera, et cetera. So to keep it simple, follow what I said before. Buy from a dealership that's certified and will give you a true Carfax. Have your financing in your hand first before you go in. Do not take your car at the same time. Have that where you can say no, walk away, get in your car, and drive out of there. Okay? The best deal comes along every day. Don't fall in love with a single vehicle. Find one that you like, that gets you excited, but make sure the deal is what gets you the most excited. Hopefully you've liked this video. Please do. Please subscribe. If you know somebody that might enjoy this video and need this information, please share it with them. I'm Ben. Be good.